Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. My guest today is a native of Southern California. She's a social activist, a youth advocate, and the founder and president of the nonprofit organization R.O.C. My good friend of almost 25 years, Ms. Aurianna Angelique. Aurianna,
Woo.
thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. 25 years.
I know I
Wow.
didn't mean to age us.
Like that.
Yeah, next year will be 25 years because we met in 97.
You're my oldest friend, I think, that I honestly
I'm
still know.
everybody's oldest friend. I have the most longevity in people's lives.
You really do. And I feel like nothing's changed, like since we've known each other, we just
We had like a few years of a break, but then we just, went back like it was normal.
right
But
back in.
like literally 1997 feels like it was, I don't even know how long ago.
I
1997? Are you kidding me?
know. It's crazy.
Ariana is a retired performer. She's
Yes,
no longer in the business.
longer business.
But what she is doing now is even more impactful than her performing. So I know last year specifically, Ariana, you really stepped up and things kind of changed in your life trajectory, your career trajectory, and just what you started putting emphasis into. So how did Rock Era come about?
I like to say from one of my favorite singers, Miss India Ari, she has a line in her song that says, she's a person of motion. And so I agree with that and have always resonated with that line. I was in the industry for 15 plus years as a musical theater actress, and then it was done for me. It was time to close the door. I knew there was more things that were I had to do before the end of my life. And so I really just decided I wanted to be a content creator, and I wanted to write and create for children's film and television. I've always been a youth advocate. But it wasn't about just creating content. It was about creating diverse content, bringing more diverse characters to the forefront. As you can probably agree, I, growing up, did not have many characters that looked like me that I could relate to at all. And still, there's not enough today. So that's kind of where I shifted at the beginning of 2019. And that was kind of my focus for that year. And then, the pandemic happened and things sort of stopped for a second. And I, again, as a person of motion, I feel like when the pandemic hit, some people, it's either fight or flight. And for me, I did a lot of things. I jumped into, volunteering for Red Cross. And then, the death of George Floyd and the riots. I mean, I've always been an activist or an advocate in some aspect of my life. But this year, I was sitting in my apartment and I thought, this is the time to jump. And so I, became a social activist here in LA. And Rock Era initially was actually not about the youth in the beginning. As an activist here in the streets, which we can talk about, it's definitely it's a role for sure, and it's for a type of person to be out in the streets, boots on the ground, fighting for social justice. There's a role for everyone, but
Yeah,
for
for
me,
sure.
last year that was it for me. I mean, I just, I have a loud voice, and I always tell this story that the first time I went to one of my first marches, and I was just using my voice, and I stepped up and was, people were quiet, so I started leading chants, and this one ally stepped up to me and said, I have this megaphone, and I feel like you need it more than I do. So if
Hmm.
you don't find me at the end, it's yours, keep it. And I always tell that story because to me that was the moment where I got my power. I truly believe,
Yeah.
like, as an activist, this is where I belonged. So I led over 2,000 people for the rest of the day, and then it was just continuous. And so
It's
Rock
very
Air,
symbolic. That was like the moment
right,
that like you were given permission to just step
right.
into your purpose in that
And by an
sense.
ally too, which was interesting.
Yeah.
I've been an activist for a while, and we have never seen this many amount of allies in the streets ever. So that was something that was incredible. So from there, the streets were getting more and more dangerous, just with the police presence and just people angry and wanting. There's some certain type of activists that just want to fight, and it's just, they're out there, they're angry, which I understand. But so Rock Air was initially more of a de-escalation tactic. We regardless of color, so we would go out there and we would talk, we would de-escalate, and we would have conversations and get people to sort of, educate. And then as the year went on, I realized, what do I want to do with this movement? Where is my passion? And my passion has always been children.
Mm.
From, my entire life, whether I've, taught musical theater or worked with kids in some capacity. So that's when I realized, what, it's time to shift. And, for me, it's important that you evolve with the movement. You evolve, like staying in one position. That's just, for me, I don't know. I think I evolved with it. And so now, Rock Era, we focus on empowering the lives of children in lower income communities, especially our oppressed communities right here in Los Angeles. Watts in particular is one of the worst neighborhoods in California. And so
Yeah.
we have been working there now for 6 months. Started off, I'm sorry, this is a long-winded answer. Started off as mutual aid, and then because we couldn't do much for during COVID-19, and then now that we're it's opening up again, we're full go with our kids program.
I love that. And yes, you
We
have
want
always been passionate about kids. I remember
always.
when you decided to kind of step back from doing performing, you wanted to focus on bringing arts programs to children. So that's
Always.
what you're doing. And you're doing it for the communities that don't
Yeah,
get the access to it. They don't
exactly.
have it in their schools, which that's another conversation about how
Exactly.
arts are always taken out of schools, but
Exactly.
specifically for children of color because we were very lucky. We had quote unquote privilege in that sense that we were exposed to music and arts growing up. And
Exactly.
I know for a fact, like I don't need to see statistics or data or whatever, that if there were more arts programs in inner cities, it would totally turn things around.
100%. It changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my life. And I actually said this on another interview recently. If I didn't have the arts, if I didn't grow up in the world of musical theater and I didn't find that passion, I don't know where I'd be right now. And I
Yeah,
don't even know
same.
if I'd be the founder of Rock Era, to be honest. Like, I
Yeah,
don't think, I don't want to, I don't know where I'd be, but it wouldn't be here.
right.
So it's, and that's another thing. I'm glad you said that. Our goal, is to bring in untraditional things. So that's why the arts is the first thing that I automatically, obviously it's in my world. It's what I used to do. So sharing that gift, but it's important that these children have access to things that they don't normally have access to. So the performing arts, untraditional sports, things that, taking them outside of the projects, outside of that environment, introducing them to a world of opportunities. Like, that's the
Hmm.
goal. That's the difference between us and an after school program, is that we're not doing the typical things that you would normally see.
Right.
This is nurturing the child's interest, and you know teaching them different languages and different types of music and different types of sports that they're not used to. They don't think that they have access to. So yeah.
Right, right. And that falls also into representation for that community because why would they think that they could do something if they've never been exposed to it or see people that look like them that are doing it as well? So I think, especially in those neighborhoods like in Watson Compton, like people just don't want to go over there. And it's like you have to go over there if you want it to change and you want them to grow up believing that they can do things. So what you're doing is just monumental. And I'm so proud of you. I do want to backtrack a little bit though and talk about your experience being in the streets because, I would have been out there, but I had a baby, so I had to be responsible.
Right, right.
But, how were you able to kind of placate some of the resistance you guys received? Because even when you're marching with, people that look like us and marching with allies, there tends to always be some sort of fallout. And, we can talk about who starts those situations, but how have you kind of managed to do damage control in the streets?
That's a yes, that's a loaded question. So I will say to backtrack from the beginning of the question, I will say that there has been a lot. You're right. There's been a lot of drama within the community ourselves, and it's really unfortunate. Even within the Black community of
Hmm.
activists, we are constantly butting heads. There's different ideologies, different ways of how people want to move, and for me, somehow I've stepped into a leadership position in LA. And so I've tried to bring um, the leaders together at least. And when we talk about our allies, I think that's something that has been taken advantage of at this point. I think in the beginning it was, we were praising them for having that much, support, and it was incredible. And I
Hmm.
think that now it's gone too far. There are great allies out there, but I think it's become to the point where they feel as they can do whatever they want, and that's an issue when it comes to, for me, I'm in the streets for Black liberation, period. That is why I'm in the streets. And so when you come in with a different agenda, there's a time and a place for it. If you are, I'm not going to say certain types of allies or anything, but if you have a different agenda, there's a time and a place for it. If you're going to be in this space as a for Black liberation, you need to show up and listen. And I think that was the biggest thing in the beginning too, is giving Black people a voice, giving us a
Hmm.
voice finally, especially Black women. But I will say, I have, especially with de-escalation, I have a way of being able to de-escalate whatever, in whatever capacity. If we're marching for the families, there's a family of a victim. The point is to keep them safe. The point is to not agitate. The point is to not, we're marching to keep that particular family safe. I will say though that as an activist in the streets for almost a year, it was exhausting.
Mm,
And there were moments where I didn't even realize until after the fact that I have PTSD from a lot of experiences from it. You know, we can
yeah,
get into that if you want to get there. I think it's important to talk about because mental health is so important, especially in the world of activism. Like, and I didn't really realize it because I was constant. You know,
yeah,
especially the summer through the fall. I don't, you know, I think I was out there 5 to 6 times a week, you know, and this is at midnight, this is through the day, this is, you know, and there's just different situations and, dealing with the police. And I think for me, the most PTSD came from, the counter protest and the Trump supporters and
mhm,
that whole world, which we can talk about if you want to. It's just, and I think I'm at a place now where I've come to, understand it and have tried to work through it. But yeah, there's been a lot of issues within the community. We're trying to work it out, especially here in LA, and it's not just LA, it's everywhere.
it's
It's
everywhere,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah,
But right now in LA, we're really trying to focus on empowering the Black leaders in the streets,
yeah.
giving them a voice because a lot of these allies have sort of knocked off their crown, and it's important that we get that back. So that's kind of the role that I've assumed right now within the streets here in LA.
How do you deal with your mental health in these situations? Because even being out on the streets, but even if you weren't out on the streets, it's the constant images of Black bodies being killed and the headlines and the videos that specifically, like, I haven't gotten to the point where I am like, I can't watch a video. Certain times I'm like, I don't want to, I don't need to, I know what happens. But I know there's so many people in our community that are like, I don't want to ever see a video again. I don't want to see a picture. And I get it. And I think that it's become, I hate this phrase, but it's kind of true. It's like trauma porn for some people, that they just keep continuously posting these images and posting these videos, thinking that they're contributing to awareness, which I appreciate, but not thinking about the toll that it takes on the mental health of the Black community. So, how have you managed to protect your mental health in the streets and just even at home when you see a headline?
In the beginning, I'll be honest, I wasn't thinking about my mental health. In the beginning, I was reacting. So I would
Mm,
see a video, I would see something that would infuriate me. I would, and I remember I have proof of it too on my Instagram and just in videos in the beginning of the whole movement. I was, happy, crying, just emotions throughout the day, and I have proof of it. But I really wasn't. I wasn't taking care of my mental health in the beginning, and I had to step back because I kind of got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And I definitely
yeah.
was, again, I was reacting. I would react to the video, I would see something, and we'd be out in the streets,
Mm,
and we'd be angry and fighting, and then there all night and exhausted. So it was a constant, sort of repetitive thing. And so I took a big break
yeah.
after after my most traumatic event experience in Yorba Linda.
Hmm.
I didn't realize it, at the time until maybe like a week later, and I realized, what, I'm in a not a good place. So I took a big break. I took a big break, and now I pick and choose. Now, I kind of took. I think the holidays, everybody sort of died down for a second, and I was focusing on Rock Era and the kids. And when I came back, now I decide when and where I put my energy.
Mm,
I'm not in the streets constantly now, and it really has to be something. I don't step out in the streets unless there's an action behind it, unless we are demanding something. At something last year nobody thought about. We were just out there because that's what it was needed at the time. Now I think some of these actions, they're just, again, people are bored or people, so it's important that there's something behind the action. So mental health for me now is just taking a step back, taking a break, focusing on Rock Era, and sort of trying to balance where I'm needed and where my energy is needed the most, and just and sometimes just unplugging completely is
right.
is really important.
In terms of finding that call to action, I know that a lot of people struggle with that because I know people want to do something, they don't know where to start, and they feel that, okay, well, maybe if I just post this, or maybe if I organize this rally or organize this event or whatever
Right.
without having an action, like at least I'm bringing awareness. And I'm not going to ever fault anybody for trying because I
Sure.
think the heart is always in the right place. But how have you deciphered the difference between just speaking loudly and calling things out and actually doing a call to action? Like, what was that dichotomy for you?
Um, well, I will say, as far as speaking loud, and I'll be honest here. I mean, I think that some activists are performative. And as when I was
Yeah.
a performer for 20 years, I can spot that immediately.
Right,
And
right.
I can spot it immediately. And I'm just completely so against it in every way because so for me again, and also in the streets now, I know pretty much every organizer. I know, in the California area, especially Los Angeles. So I know people's intentions
Yeah,
really. Um,
right.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think if you want to bring awareness and don't know how, I don't think that hosting a rally or I think it's important to educate yourself first. And there are so many ways to educate, yourself on all of it. There's so many grassroots organizations. It's really finding where your role is, and then doing the research to find out where you can fit in. But I think sort of I also think that if you're new and you're coming into this again with no education and no awareness of what the demands are or anything, it can be dangerous.
Yeah.
That last year there was a lot of new organizers that were just sort of holding things and calling things, and we were put in really dangerous situations. So I definitely think if you want to be a part of it, you want to do something, definitely educate yourself and reach out to organizations that can guide you on the best way to do that.
Yeah. For you, because, for the listeners, the Ariana is biracial, and but she identifies as a black woman. And how have you navigated that? Like navigated your identity and speaking out for the black community? Because I always joke, Sienna's your mini me, right? But she's a black woman. She's gonna grow up to be a black woman, and that's what her identity is, and that's who she is. That's how the world's going to see her. So
Yeah,
for you, how have you navigated that? Because I love your mom. I've known your mom forever, right? And I know
right.
you don't deny her,
Not at
but
all.
your
Not at all.
identity is as a black woman. So how have you balanced that?
I mean, I thank God for her every day because, like I mentioned, as I said it multiple times, she raised me as a black woman, and I tell this story all the time. That she said she took her first look at me and saw my features, saw my hair texture. My brothers are also mixed, but they can pass as almost white in certain ways. I cannot. And so she raised me as a black woman, and so it's never really been a complex. When I was younger, it was an issue because, and like I didn't quite feel like I fit in with either culture, and
Mhm.
that was a struggle. And even in the entertainment industry as a performing art, as a musical theater actress, there was so much racism in that industry that I now look back on and was completely blinded by.
Yep.
I
Yep.
spent 15 years auditioning was my career. And I remember being told so many things like, you're not black enough, you're not white enough, you're too tall, you don't sound black enough, sound more like a mammy, all these things that I just
Mm.
and we accepted because we didn't, it was what it was. And nobody was, we just turned a blind eye, to it. And
There's
I
also that fear of speaking up that like you're gonna burn a
right,
bridge or like you're gonna be viewed a certain way if you call
right.
people out, which we're past that now because I don't care.
That's
And I know
that's
you don't care anymore either. But yeah, in that time in our lives for
it
sure,
was
for
okay.
sure.
It
Yeah.
was a thing. So yeah, but I think now there's no question. I think to answer your question about how I'm dealing with that, especially as an activist, I mean, I've always identified as a black woman. I love and appreciate my mother, and always, and I do love my Caucasian side of my family. But I've always been, the world views me as a black woman.
Yeah.
So when everything happened, and again, I've been an activist for a while now. I haven't had a chance to be on the ground because I was performing
Mm.
constantly,
Mhm.
and this was my chance, and there's no question. I don't feel the need to explain my ethnicity.
And you shouldn't have to. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, but there are some biracial people that have this complex and feel like they shouldn't be in the streets because they are A, B, and C, D. And I really in this generation, in this day and age, it's like whoever you identify as, own that, be authentic, and own who you are. And my
Yeah.
mom, you mentioned my mom, she is one of the biggest allies on the
I
block.
love your mom.
And so
She's just
she
the best.
Right. And so she's right there with me constantly, and she's one of my biggest supporters. And, I just feel really lucky to have grown up the way that I did, because
Yeah.
again, I don't know. I can't imagine identifying as a Caucasian woman looking the way that I look,
Right.
so, and it's unfortunate, but the world is black and white. And that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I thank God
That's
for
just the
her.
hard
Being
truth.
around black people. I grew up in a black church. I was always singing in Baptist churches. I was in a part of a community choir, inner light,
Mhm.
and so yeah, that's to answer your question. I haven't, it hasn't really been a complex. I've mentioned it just in my last couple of speeches I've done. because I think it's important to help people that are maybe going through that, to let them know, like, whoever you
Don't
identify
feel
as.
they don't know where they land. Yeah.
Exactly. But you
Yeah.
have every right, and I hate to mention this, but I always think about this. Like back in the day, one drop of Negro blood, and you were considered a Negro.
Yeah.
Like there was,
Yeah.
and it's still low key like that today.
Yeah.
So
So you mentioned that one of the situations or myriad of situations, but specifically the pushback you got from Trump supporters. What was one of the, I guess, biggest misconceptions that you would hear from their side when they were having counter protests in the street? Because I am a firm believer that, well, for some of them, but I'm a firm believer that if they would just listen, they would understand. But there was never really, I feel like there's never been an attempt to listen and understand. It's just always on the defensive when they hear Black Lives Matter. They think it's not like it doesn't have to include you. We're not saying you don't matter. You know what I mean? But for you, when you've been out in the streets and you've come across counter protests, what was the biggest thing that you would hear from them?
I mean, again, I feel like I have the most experience with them just because of Rock era. If you go back
Mm,
to the beginning of us, we would go to the counter protests. We would be there and literally cross the street and have conversations for hours.
mm,
And it was exhausting in the beginning. And the biggest thing we heard a lot right away was BLM is a terrorist group.
mm,
BLM, is a terrorist group, is trying, tear down the country. I don't know, or to change things. And I mean, they would listen, and it was long conversations. It was really long conversations. But towards the end of it, towards I guess the end of the summer, things started to get dangerous, and there was no more opportunity for conversations.
mm,
But what I always started with was, and there was a couple of really epic moments where we would, at the end of the conversations, their side would come over, our side would come over, we'd have a sort of a fist pump or a hug, and then everyone would go home peacefully, and that was incredible. But to answer your question about what I heard the most, yeah, I heard that a lot about Obama, that he had a chance to change the country and do this and that. And he was one of the worst presidents, and that our lives matter too. And no, it's just a lot of the same. But at the end of the day, it's like I don't know how much. I think at one point we were able to get one of the guys to throw off his Trump hat and come on the other side. And I don't know if
mm.
that was for show or what that was, but I did feel in the beginning that the conversation was important, to because that's, at the end of the day, we want to somehow all be able to coexist. But I think after a
Yes.
while it got dangerous, and a lot of those people, some of them were horrible, some of them were awful, and there was sometimes there was no opportunity for conversation.
Right. Right.
So when I mentioned like your Belinda, that was just a whole nother.
I remember. I remember you texted me after that one. That one was
Did I?
yeah.
Oh my God, what did I see? I don't even know what I said. I was so. What did I say?
I don't I mean, it was a long time ago, but
Okay.
I remember you I think also, like, didn't your car get stolen? Or,
It,
like
yeah, but actually we found it. it
okay.
was it was my
Oh,
friend.
alright, good, good, good.
But yes,
But I
okay.
remember you said that one was, like, pretty dangerous or, like, there was, like, altercations, like, it was bad.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, well, there was a couple of arrests that happened, so I have to be careful what I say. But I will
Mhm.
say this because I've said it loud and clear. Everyone knows. I was head of security that day. It was just supposed to be a small march through the city of Yorba Linda, which is in Orange County, and it was
Mhm.
just going to be a march through the very small route just to the center of the town, just to say no more racism here. Like that
Mm.
was kind of the idea, the message. And I'll tell you this: one time we got there, we were surrounded by every single. But it was more than just Trump supporter. It was a lot of the Proud Boys. It was a lot of
Mm.
people that we'd seen sort of spread up throughout LA and California. They had come from everywhere to meet us that day. So as head of security, I was trying to keep, and when I say head of security, I mean keeping our people safe. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I've always been an advocate of is if I'm not with the kids with Rock Era, I'm keeping the people and the families safe that want have that right to be in the
Mhm.
streets. It's
Mhm.
never anything more. Never, I would never put anyone in jeopardy. I always want to keep the people safe and allow them to march and feel safe. And by the time it was ready for us to go, we had over 250, Trump supporter Proud Boys basically attacking us, and it was the most traumatic experience I've had as an activist. And I remember, not being able. We did the march and not being able to turn around. I marched backwards for 2.5 miles because if we turned around, they'd be. We just couldn't turn around. So
Wow.
we were facing off with them, walking backwards, and I was bear maced several times. And I wasn't physically attacked, but almost very, very, very close to it. But the bear mace was devastating. It was a lot. And just, remembering like feeling that hate. I've never felt that much hate in my life from just looking the way that I look or being a Black
Yeah.
woman in that city that day. So, um,
So you'll never go back to your Belinda.
no, I don't think so. I mean,
Oh
no,
man.
no. So it was a
Man.
lot, but that's the as an activist, that's the role that we take. You just don't know. You
You
never
never know.
know,
Yep. Yep.
but somebody's got to do it.
Well, you are brave. You are brave. Let's talk a little bit about now your goals with Rock Era, because I mean, again, I'm so proud of you. I love what you're doing. You're getting people involved. You're going into the cities that need it. What is an end goal for you? I mean, not an end. It's never going to end, but but like looking at the end of the year, what would you like to have accomplished with the organization?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're moving really quickly, and we have so many partnerships. We've partnered with the Children's Institute now. We're bringing in our programs all over Watts, but the goal, I guess, by the end of the year, the goal would be to expand.
Hmm.
We really, I mean, because of the areas that we're in, there's some of the projects don't even have a space where we can be yet. So we've just been outside, in the grass, in the dirt, doing our programs. And so for me, the goal would be to have a safe space for these children to
Yeah.
be. And because our work is so much in Watts right now, my board and I have talked about, opening up a rock center right there in Watts. And another thing is because we're working in different projects, but that are pretty close by, but there's different gang rivalries happening. We can't even combine the children.
Mm.
We can't bring them because of parents and gang issues right there, and where we are. So the goal would be to open up a space and bring kids from all the projects into this one space under one roof. So yeah, that would be our end goal. You know,
To have a
Sooner or
center
later
for them.
to have a center. But then again, I don't want just a center. We want
Hmm.
multiple centers. We want, I've always seen it, nationwide. I really believe that Rock Era could be a model, and it's not just a space. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of introducing these children to endless possibilities. And we always say our slogan right now is making the impossible possible.
Mm.
And just by working with them right now, just in the last couple of months here and doing these programs, it's just you just see the change already. You see it already, and it really just takes a village. It just takes someone who cares to come in and work with these children's hands on. And I just, it's a lot of work, but I feel really blessed to be here. And I see this is just the beginning for Rock Era.
Right. I mean, the impact you're making is huge. How have you, gotten your message out to those areas and got the kids involved in the program? What has been your path for that?
Pulling up and knocking on the doors. Like, I'm gonna
Really?
be honest,
It's
yeah,
like that grassroots, that kind
it
of
is
like,
because
okay.
some of these communities, you have to build trust, number one, because
Yes.
I'm sure we know that they're used to people coming in, dumping gifts and food boxes and never seeing them again. So it took some time. We are 6 months in, and we finally have our kids programs up and running. But we started off as Rock Era. We had a little program called Rock on Wheels, where we took out of my SUV. We would drive around to these different areas and drop off stuff. Especially during COVID, we couldn't really be that hands on, and we just continue to show up. And that's the biggest thing, is consistency and showing up, especially for these children. When I pull up now, they know who we are.
Yeah.
It's not about giving them stuff, it's about being there. So yeah, so Watts Empowerment Center in Watts, and also the Jordan Downs community, we just pulled up.
You're just like, we're gonna go in the community and just show them who we are and what we do.
Exactly. And what's it's exciting too is that our work it's showing, because the Children's Institute has come in now and is taking over programs at Jordan Downs in this empty gym. And we got an email saying that the community requested us first.
Mm.
We were the first organization. They said, we want Rock Era in. And that means to me that the community, we've built that relationship with them, that they requested our program in their first dibs, with the children, with the families. Like, that's the biggest thing, is you can't just come. And I can also spot it when people are there to just come in and come out. I can see it, I feel it. And these families know that that's not where Rock Area is. We're not going anywhere. I don't plan on it. And I never thought that we'd be working in Watts first, but to me, it was all meant to be. And there are so many other communities that need this, though. And so again, I'm ready to expand, as soon as we can. So
Well, I love everything that you're doing, and I'm constantly in awe of all that you try to do and the impact that you're making. So keep doing what you're doing. Can you let people know where they can find you in Rock Era, and if they're interested in volunteering, what they should do?
Yes, of course. You can find us at our website at rockera.org, and then also on Instagram at r.o.c_ERA, which you can see all of our videos. And we're really active on Instagram right now, and our website as well. You can reach out and volunteer through there. But we are definitely in need of volunteers. I mean, we will take anything from coaches to performing volunteers to gymnastics. We're expanding quickly, so we're going to need a lot of help. So anybody who has a passion for children and a passion for social justice, hit us up.
No limit on what you can do, Ariana. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. Make sure you follow her and keep up with all of the good work they are doing at Rock Era. And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe to We Need to Talk, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.